Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Psychedelics Today. Today on the show, we have Ryan Latreille. How are you doing today, Ryan?
Doing great. How are you?
Doing pretty good. So excited for you to be on the show today. We've had a couple Kanna episodes, but this is the first one where I finally feel smart enough to ask questions that feel appropriate. So really pumped about that. So what's the name of your company first? Kanna Extract Co?
Yeah, Kanna Extract Company, um, or Co, however you want to say it.
Great.
And Kanna Extract Co. is one of my companies. I also have a company called Hearthstone Collective um, that I founded back in 2017. Um, and that was really where I started looking at Kanna more closely as a legal plant medicine that has like real efficacy and could be microdosed. Um, and the more I looked into it and the more I was testing it out on myself and some of my clients, uh, the more I saw it really had potential to help people. And so um, with Hearthstone Collective, that's a full line of Kanna microdosing formulas where these are low therapeutic doses of Kanna that are designed to naturally support different areas of mental health. Um, and then more recently, in this journey of learning more about the industry of Kanna and the field and what's out there in terms of genetics and extracts, was when I launched my new company, Kanna Extract Co., which is really focused on offering the extracts in their pure form, and really high potency. So this definitely gets more into the realm of like recreational Kanna or ceremonial Kanna, depending on how you how you partake in it. But it's significantly stronger than most of what's out there.
Yeah. So what kind of things were you seeing when you were working with people with Hearthstone? Well, actually, how do you describe what it? How do you answer what is Kanna?
I tell them that Kanna is a plant medicine that is found in the deserts of South Africa. It's a true sacred plant. It's been used there in ceremony for thousands of years. Today, it's most commonly used in low doses for its therapeutic effects. Namely, it really has the potential to support people with depression and anxiety, and it's been openly prescribed for that with products like Zembrin for like 30 years now. Um, but it also has these really amazing euphoric and empathogenic effects that are a great entry point for people to begin to explore um, this world of plant medicines.
Hmm. I love that. So, what people say on the street, is like, oh, it's supposed to feel like MDMA, but I think it's different, right? Is it when you're actually doing a macro and you're feeling it?
Yeah,
Is there some sort of sensation like that?
yeah, I think a lot of people think that is because one Vice wrote an article a few years ago comparing it to MDMA. And I think that what that reporter actually tried and what a lot of people in like the psychedelic space have actually tried is a combination of Kanna with something like MDMA. Because Kanna on its own really lacks that stimulant, that amphetamine that's in those compounds that really creates that rolling feeling and also some of the aftermath that you deal with those compounds. Um, but the pharmacology of Kanna is very interesting. So it is a bioamine releasing agent. So when you take it, it is stimulating the release of more dopamine, more norepinephrine, more serotonin. And that on its own is going to have at least contribute in part to this euphoric and pathogenic feeling that people have when they take it. So I don't know if it's fair to say that it's like MDMA-lite. Um, it definitely is an empathogen. You definitely feel a heart opening, but it is I would say distinctly different.
Yeah. And so it has traditional use as a lineage. Yeah, from what I understand, like the Kung Bushmen, many other like groups have been using it for time immemorial. Um, yeah, and I do love that it's kind of integrated into the South African medical system in some way. I find that really interesting.
Yeah. So the specifically an interesting story about the kanna that we use to produce our extracts. It is all produced from a strain of kanna called DV17, which was developed, I think, back in like 2012, 2013. And this was really when the landscape of commercial kanna extracts changed. Because before this, uh, there really wasn't high alkaloid level like kanna or extracts that was stabilized. Um, Meaning like if you had something that was very potent, you couldn't keep it stable. And uh, before then, this there was a lot of question marks around whether kanna was a psychoactive plant. Was it really doing these things that they're hearing, tales of? And um, and so my supply partners, they worked with um, a Khoi tribal leader, a Khoi leader. His name was Chief Katella, and Chief Katella lived in a region of Kanna land, which is largely where Kanna originates from. And he actually, you know, told them where to look for high alkaloid Kanna. And it was in this region where his clan lived that they found a high alkaloid strain. And it still wasn't commercially viable at this point. So they hybridized it with another Scaletium species, Scaletium expansum, with this Scaletium tortuosum, which is what we know as Kanna, and that produced DD17. And that changed everything because all of a sudden you had alkaloid levels in plants that were more than three times what they'd ever been before. Um, and uh, yeah, and so that really started. That was the first step in producing extracts like what I'm offering through Kanna Extract Co. And it's with this Kanna and particularly his clan that I have a at this point a benefit sharing agreement where 3% of all of the Kanna that I purchase goes directly to support his clan. And then the goal as I grow this company is to support more of not just the Khoi, but the San and the entire Kai Karana community.
Mm, yeah, that's amazing. The Sun are super interesting for sure, and yeah, that's great that you're helping support them. So yeah, I'll just show that I've had Hearthstone. I've had this in my possession as well. Your kind of extract. Um, and I'll admit, I'm like, okay, cool, like pills. And I open it up, and I'm like, oh, powder. What do I do? So how do you like to think about dosing for Kanna generally?
Um, yeah, it depends how you're going to take it. Uh, for therapeutic applications like daily dosing, if you're looking for support in some area of your life, I mean, doses as low as 10 milligrams of the extract that's in your hand on a daily regimen can actually produce real results over a several week protocol. Um, but if people are really looking to feel the Kanna, then we recommend doing a dose of 50 milligrams, which you showed the packaging. It comes with that little scoop spoon, so and there's an instruction card that shows you how to measure it out too. So yeah, two doses of that, two scoops of that under your tongue is actually a really strong way to take it. You can also mix it into water or smoothie, or if you're a medicine maker and you're doing your own, you know, combinations of other plant medicines you want to incorporate Kanna, this is a really great form, and you can just scoop it into, edibles, to cacao. I mean, it's very stable and water soluble. The strongest way to take it is actually is intranasally, to insufflate it. But I would, you know, recommend that that be done by people who have experience doing that, and it is quite strong that way.
Interesting. That's good to know. I had no clue. Um, and for microdosing, do you recommend any kind of protocols? Like I know the Hearthstone stuff is kind of more microdose focused. Is that right?
Yeah. Um, Again, I think anywhere from 10 to 50 milligrams, uh, 1 to 2 times per day. Typically, with microdosing, I recommend that people sequence it with on days and off days because most people's bodies seem to respond more to the on days when there are days of rest or off days. Um, that said, everyone's different. Some people, it really does help them to take it every single day. Um, and others can just take it more sporadically, like, if you're not necessarily wanting to microdose it, but you want it more for a social occasion or something. Or I mean, a lot of people are really liking this as an alternative to alcohol, um, as something that's healthier when you are in a social festive environment and you want to feel more open, more connected, more just happy and free. This is like, I think, a really great alternative for people than other compounds that tend to not leave you feeling so good the next day.
Right. Yeah. As I age, it's worse and worse. So, I'm kind of curious. Like, could you tell us like how kind of came into your world? Like, how did you start noticing it, and what maybe made you so interested in it that you wanted to start a company?
Well, I was introduced to it in 2012, and I that was in uh, someone invited me to a plant medicine ceremony, and I was given a dose of Kanna that was mixed with MDMA. And that was not only my first experience with Kanna, but also my first experience with any kind of psychedelic and my first heart opening ever. Um, and it was very impactful. That like what I experienced, that feeling that I felt, I knew was really important. That if more people could feel that um, the world would be a much better place. People would be a lot happier. I would, um, yeah. So I spent a lot of time in those underground, um, with underground psychedelic therapists that were doing that kind of work for about a year, and that was the only um, context that I was working with Kanna at that point. Um, After eventually I got into mycology and learning, growing like lion's mane and medicinal mushrooms at my dad's house, and that was eventually how Hearthstone was born, with just a line of different mushroom formulas. And like I said, it was around this time that microdosing started becoming a lot more popular. And so I started looking at Kanna more closely as just, like I said, a legal option that people could begin to explore the concept of microdosing or psychedelics, but with something that is legal, that's safe, is a lot more accessible, but it also has real efficacy, um, especially in the areas of mental health that people are looking for support when they're looking at doing a microdosing protocol.
I love that. Yeah. Um, and that's a really interesting way to get introduced to it. Um, are you were you in Southern California at the time when that was going down?
That was in Southern
Like the
California, yeah.
underground circles?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Um, I've heard more about interesting mixes like that from Southern California than from most other places. So that's fascinating to me. Um, cool. So what what kind of stuff are you seeing with people using it? Like, are you getting success stories back from folks?
Um, yeah, I mean, I've been doing Hearthstone a lot longer. I just launched Kanna Extract Company at the MAPS conference where we met. Um, so with Hearthstone, a lot of people have reported that they've, and again, I want to preface this by saying with working with their prescribing physician, have been able to come off of medications that they no longer wanted to take. Um, that yeah, that they've found a lot of benefits for from those different formulas in the areas that they support. With Kanna Extract Company, I've gotten a lot of feedback from people saying that this is some of the best Kanna that they've ever tried in its pure form. And um, I mean, I really have set out to offer the best Kanna extracts possible. And yeah, again, this is more like in the recreational realm, but the feedback has been very positive in terms of the effects felt.
Mm, that's interesting. Are you yeah, so I assume you found somebody you love working with in South Africa, or like growers, and then you're able to import what you think is the best. Is that, or how does that whole thing work?
Yeah, so I only source from growers that are first working with these high alkaloid genetics, and that's really the first step. And I mean, I could go pretty in depth into what cultivation looks like, but to keep it surface level for now,
If you could do a little,
um,
that would be nice.
well, so Wakana is not geographically stable, so it's a very interesting plant to try to cultivate commercially. The plants and the genetics that grow well in, say, Kana land will not necessarily perform well on the opposite side of the country in near Cape Town, um, and for that matter anywhere else in the world. So you what we do is we start with seeds, and we have a like a really healthy seed bank, and we start propagating a lot of plants from this strain from seed, and then we're doing lab testing all along the way, first to make sure that the alkaloid levels that are present, and when I say alkaloid levels, the the main things inside of Kanna, the compounds that make you feel something, are called alkaloids, and the three primary ones that we're looking at are mesembrine, mesembryanone, and delta 7 mesembryanone. And so there's a lot more. It's a very botanically complex plant, but those are the three that we are standardizing and looking at when analyzing genetics that we're going to grow at scale. Um, so, uh, so I mean, we're sending lab samples to HPLC every day, looking for those levels, and once we find strains that do have the potency that we're looking for, we're also evaluating, well, how fast is it growing? How resistant is it to, pests and you know, other contaminants? How rigorous of a strain is it going to be? And then when we find a winner in that area, that's when we'll bring it into scale by cloning it. And that is actually kind of similar to how cannabis works. Um, And yeah, so then once we grow it, everything that we grow is at least what I source for Kanna Extract Company is what's called nutraceutical grade Kanna. Um, in the Kanna industry, there's essentially three grades of Kanna. There's at the top pharmaceutical grade, and oftentimes this is, I mean, it's grown in completely controlled environments. Oftentimes it's hydroponic. but always like a controlled medium that it's growing in. And this produces hands down the most potent kanna, but it's very expensive. Um, and it's grown almost exclusively for pharmaceutical applications. Um, Next tier down is what's called nutraceutical grade. So it's grown in like basically hoop houses. So it's grown semi outdoors, semi controlled environment, um, grown in like grow pots essentially, and we grow a lot of plants. A lot of plants are used to produce these extracts, and um, nutraceutical grade is quite potent, like almost as potent as pharmaceutical grade, but at a much more accessible price point. And then the lowest tier of kanna is what's called table grade. And table grade kanna, they grow just out in open fields by the acre, and it's, you know, farmed using like conventional farming practices essentially. And it typically does not yield very high alkaloid levels, but it's a very inexpensive way to grow kanna. Um, so you can't really produce a good extract from table grade because you just don't have the alkaloids present to begin with. But that is more and more what you're beginning to see in a lot of like less expensive kanna products is table grade, or like if you drink like there's a few brands that have like a kanna tea, and if you try it, like you don't really feel, you definitely just you don't feel what you feel when you try the extracts, and those are all made with table grade kanna. Um, so once we you know the growing cycle is typically about a year is when we're able to do a harvest, and when we um, when we're going to extract it, we first dry it, and then it goes through our um, proprietary extraction process. Which what I'll say is that kanna is the alkaloids inside of kanna are easy to pull out. They like they're water. Most of them are water soluble, so you can pull them out. It's very hard though to produce a high potency kanna extract that's stable, that won't degrade very rapidly once you've done the extraction. And that's a lot of what I'm seeing out there, is that other companies that are trying to do extracts, they can pull it out, but then it doesn't stay potent for very long. Um, and then it's even harder to have a stabilized extract that you can then render into a workable powder form, like what we're offering. Um, and so that's yeah. So that's kind of the story of how we go from seed all the way to extract, and then we everything's third party lab tested for not just purity and potency, um, but also we're testing for um, heavy metals, biocontaminants, and then which should all be tested, but then where we're going above and beyond what I'm seeing out there is testing for pesticides and residual solvents. And especially when you're working with high potency extracts, it's really important that these things are tested for, um, so that you know that you're not harming your body. Um, so I guess one more thing that's important to note in how we do the extracts. So I offered two different profiles on my website, Lift and Bliss. And so essentially they are both pure Kanna extracts, but that the ratio of those three alkaloids to each other is what is different between them and what produces the different felt effects. Um, so on the packaging, you'll see like the mesembrine, mesembryanone, delta 7 mesembryanone, and then the percentages, meaning the ratio of those to each other. So what we're doing with the the plants and then the extracts is we're reading where they are coming out naturally, and then we do a blending process in order to get our standardized profile. Um, yeah. Do you want me to go into the like what the alkaloids do, or guide me a little bit on what you think would be interesting to talk about?
Please. Yeah, I see the ratios
Um,
seem different in different packages. So yeah, that'd be great.
yeah. So the mesembrine, this is the benchmark alkaloid in Kanna. This is what is responsible for most of the measurable effects in the plant. It's kind of the equivalent of how THC is used to evaluate cannabis strains in terms of not just potency, but also like the quality of a Kanna product. You really do need to look at the mesembrine levels. Mesembrine is as an alkaloid, the effects are stimulating, energizing. It is the euphoric, empathogenic feeling as well. Um, Mezembrinone, this is uh, this is I mean it's a PDE4 inhibitor, so it actually has antipsychotic properties. PDE4 inhibitors, when they're prescribed in the pharmaceutical space, are very effective for things like bipolar, schizophrenia. It has light, um, like anti-anxiety, like light, relaxing qualities, but really it's the delta seven mezembrinone that is very relaxing. It can be almost sedating in higher levels. Um, and so with those three alkaloids, we are able to create a range of different experiences. And the two that I offer are bliss and lift, just because that really gives um, people kind of two avenues to go down. And when you start stacking them with other compounds, whether if it's like the Hearthstone line with other nootropics, you can make it something that supports more like relaxation versus something that supports more of sleep. Or if you're a medicine maker and you want to combine it with other, you know, plant medicines or psychedelics, um, you can do some really cool things with these two strains, and they play really well with a lot of compounds.
I love hearing that. What are some of your favorite ones to blend in other compounds?
Mushrooms, like psilocybin mushrooms, and um, yeah, like the bliss extract is incredible. Um, it, I really like to do like a 100 to 200 milligram dose of the bliss with, anywhere from 200 milligrams of mushrooms all the way up to like a gram, and depending on how strong of an experience you want. And it really grounds the experience in the heart and body. It can feel almost like MDMA, but without all the repercussions of taking MDMA all night. You feel a lot better the next day. That by far is my favorite combo, and I'm actually really excited as Kanna becomes more popular and there's more research done on Kanna, and hopefully how its potential benefits and what it's doing um, for our brains when you combine psilocybin and these alkaloids in Kanna, and like its potential benefits for mental health. I think there's um, yeah, I'd be really excited to see research done
Mm.
on that.
Yeah, it would be good to collect some provisional data, I guess, just case reports like your own. And then, yeah, we could probably figure out a way to get a study going. That would be really interesting. Um,
Yeah,
I'm sure you're not the only one, right? So,
probably not.
um, I think that's, I think that's really interesting. Um, yeah, I find it funny that I get intimidated by things that aren't pills. I'm just like, huh, what do I do with that? But like your explanation was really, I could have just read the directions, right? But I wanted to wait to talk to you, I think. But I love that. So 50 milligrams, you say, is the normal dose, light dose 25, but you're going 100 to 200 with that. That's fascinating. And do you prefer to hold it under your tongue?
That's my preference is to take it under my tongue. It comes on pretty quick. My go-to is the Bliss. So personally, for me,
Yeah.
the Bliss, I like to take it. Um, I experience anxiety, especially when I do public speaking or something like that, and so I often take this before public speaking. And when it comes on, it feels like just this wave of relief washing over me. I've also tried it a few times in um, more like ceremony settings, and it's felt really strong for me. Like it's felt almost like MDMA, and this has only happened a few times for me, though I hear this a lot, and so I think that it is something that is like activated by set and setting, where if you're um, yeah, like I said, just in a more intimate setting, it seems to activate much more like an empathogen, where when I've taken it in a few times when I'm, getting up to go talk in front of a bunch of people, it just feels very, very calming. And yeah, I appreciate what you said about the powder form being intimidating. I mean, really, it's so people can see like the pure extracts because there aren't a lot of kind of products out there where you can just work with it in its pure form. And I really want it to be something that could be fun for like medicine makers, like in this space to play with and make their own formulations with. Uh, I mean, the lift in particular is really um, great intranasally. So, I mean, people that use like Hape regularly and are just used to insufflating things, I think they'll really like that with the lift in particular. That said, I don't know when this podcast will come out, but I have a line of Kanna vapes that are in production right now that I should have available in by the second half of November, and those are incredible. They're much easier to take, um, and yeah, they just feel amazing, and they're nicotine free, cannabis free. They're just our Kanna extracts in a basically an oil form.
Well, I would love to be a test pilot. That's super interesting.
Yeah, I'll
Um,
definitely get you some when they're
so
ready.
I have outstanding. So one of the questions I received from people when I was asking about Kana on my socials earlier today was there's reports, and I don't know if you've dug into this at all, about Kana helping men with premature ejaculation. Have you heard of anything like that, or have you dug into
Yeah,
any data on that at all?
yeah, I think the big company that is like pursuing that right now in the pharma space is called Kanna Health. And so
Mm-hmm.
um, I don't know anything about their I don't really actually know anything about them other than that they're pursuing that. I think that they are
Yeah.
connected to the Zembrin people. Um, but like I don't know about their extracts and what they're specifically aiming for. What I could speak to is that Kana is very relaxing on the nervous system, so that's going to help a lot. But then there's I just went into those three alkaloids, mesembrine, mesembrino, delta 7. But there's a lot more alkaloids in there. Mesembrinol is a quite potent PDE5 inhibitor, which is the same like mode of action as sildenafil, Cialis. I think actually the alkaloid scaletium A4 is also a PDE5 inhibitor, so both of those are going to have strong prosexual benefits. And I think depending on how you built the alkaloid profile around those, you could, I mean, you could make something really cool. Um, you're going to definitely need the right genetics to do it because those two alkaloids in particular are not necessarily very high in strains, so that I've seen commercially available. So, that may be something that they're already working on is strains that are really high in that. Um, but yeah, I mean, Kanna is a very special plant. I mean, there's 28 known alkaloids at this point, each that have distinct effects on the central nervous system. And with the right chemist, you can make really, really cool extracts with it.
Hmm. That's really interesting. So we've not even really started to scratch the surface then? Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
I mean, it's kind of like, do you think that we've scratched the surface on psilocybin or even cannabis at this point with all the research that we've done? I mean, we're nowhere even near that with Kanna.
I would call it scratching the surface on those two, but
Okay.
like not much further, right? Like we have a long way to go
Yeah.
with psilocybin and
That
cannabis,
that's my
obviously.
point. I think there's still a long way to go. And
Yeah.
with Kanna, um, I mean, thanks
Hmm.
to the work of Zembrin, we actually have like studies with human participants going back like 30 years now. So, but there aren't a lot of other parties that are like backing research. There's like a handful of a lot more can be done, and I think the more that we do, um, the more exciting findings we're going to learn. And I believe that the more interest that comes behind this from a commercial perspective of just people wanting to buy Kanna is actually gonna. I mean, look at the difference in strains, the amount of strains that we had in cannabis from like the 90s till now. And even with mushrooms, like the amount of strains of mushrooms we have now versus like 10 years ago. I think the more people get interested in this and the more just energy and enthusiasm there is in people and companies growing Kanna and experimenting with ways of producing products with it, that we're going to see some really cool things.
I love that. I always like novelty. And that's really fascinating. Yeah, just the number of pairings you've kind of mentioned so far make me get really curious about what might be next here. But also like what are people doing? So the first person I ever heard of Kanna from was a university professor who was doing Kanna ceremony with their friends, like in lieu of MDMA, which is fascinating. And this was years ago, 3 4 years ago, before I saw real brands kind of developing like yours, um, and I found that amazing just to know that there's stuff out there that me as this person who's got a platform like this doesn't know a thing about. And there's I think a lot of that still, but I just loved knowing that there were people out there who were professors who were using this stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, just there's so many cool plants out there that we just there. I think there's a lot more to learn and discover. I mean, just in South Africa, there's so many novel medicinal plants. Um, and yeah, I think the more interest we have in our consumer base around plants and plant medicines, the more cool things we're going to find.
Yeah. Um, what are some things that have really surprised you about reactions to Kana, both like positive, negative? Like, have you seen any kind of like pushback or just rabid excitement in recent past about Kana?
I mean, there's a lot of excitement in the supplement space around Kana because people like brands are looking for an active ingredient that people can feel. You're starting to see more and more products with nootropics in it, and like people like to feel things. They want to feel something when they take it, and they want to feel good, and they want to feel happier, and so I see a lot of excitement um, by brands in the supplement space that can use Kana as an active ingredient that will help. like catalyze the feeling in what they want their product to produce. Um, I see a lot of excitement in the microdosing space, um, from people that are looking for an empathogen that can be microdosed daily without diminishing returns. Um, and there aren't really a lot out there that are like that have that energetic as a heart medicine, or those qualities that you can microdose daily to stay more connected. Um, and I mean, those are just the two worlds I'm in, which is why I see the most excitement there. Um, but I I guess just from feedback that I've been given from customers, um, people really are looking for natural ways to support their mental health and to have a higher quality of life, um, without the side effects that come from more conventional routes of you know supporting that.
Um, are you familiar with any kind of ongoing clinical research or brain imaging or kind of like mechanism of action work ongoing to like help us kind of understand this plant better in humans?
Um, yeah, I mean, currently, I don't know anything that's going on right now, just because that's not really where my focus is. Um, but there was a research paper that was published, I guess, last year, that is kind of a synthesis of all the most relevant research on Kanna done over the last 30 years, and I can email that to you after this if you want to like post it somewhere for people that are more interested in seeing the actual research on it.
Yeah, there has to be a whole legacy of research. There's obviously when something becomes popular, researchers then are attracted to it, which is always great. Um, and I wish there were more microdosing researchers, trying to actually
Yeah,
help us understand psilocybin microdosing a little better, but we'll get there. It's happening slowly but surely. Yeah, it's actually shocking to me. I don't know people in the university world who are looking at it. I But perhaps it's just like the thing is just about to flip over into academia. Um, I know people
yeah.
are flooding in trying to research psychedelics, so this could be next.
It's it's definitely being talked about in certain circles, and there are companies in more of the pharmaceutical space that are working with it, um, and yeah, I don't know how much more I can say than that at this point, but I definitely know it's of interest to a lot of people right now.
Can you talk about drug interactions at all with Kanna?
Yeah. Oh, and that was the other part that I was going to go into is more of the pharmacology of the plant, if you're interested. But to just
Please.
cover drug interactions first, the I have a blanket disclaimer just with the products that I sell. If you are on any medication or have any health issues, that it's really important that you work with your healthcare provider before taking Kanna and really before doing any kind of nootropic supplement. Um, that said, the ones in particular that people should be cautious and aware of is SSRIs and MAOIs. Um, if you're already being prescribed this kind of medication, it is really important that you talk with your doctor first. And you probably don't want to combine them. Um, the risk being having a serotonergic reaction, or it's also called serotonin syndrome. So having too high of serotonin levels can have negative side effects. Um, from the most extreme end, people can die from that. From the low end of the spectrum, it's like experiencing a headache or weird tingling sensations in your spine. So it's it's definitely not a fun experience to go through. I have not heard of anyone going through that with Kanna, but it's important for people to be aware of potential risks and to talk with their doctor. Um, and Yeah, you had asked about the research and its mode of action, its pharmacology. I'd love to share with you like what we know so far about its pharmacology. So I mentioned that it's a bioamine releasing agent, so it's stimulating the release of more of these neurotransmitters. Um, it also has light SSRI activity, so it is functioning like an SSRI, where it's preventing the reuptake of these neurotransmitters. Um, what is unique about Kanna is that it doesn't seem to have the side effects that come with pharmaceutical SSRIs. So it seems to work much more harmoniously with your body's natural systems. Um, Kanna is a PDE4 inhibitor. Um, and I mentioned PDE4 inhibitors, when they're in the pharmaceutical world, are very successful at treating bipolar schizophrenia uh, as an antipsychotic, but it has really intense emetic side effects. So people throw up violently when they take them, so they don't prescribe them. Um, Kanna has this activity, um, but without the side effects. So those are the three main like modes of action. Um, I mean, it's also a VMAT2 upregulator, so it has a lot of pro-cognitive nootropic benefits. Um, and what we're finding is that it's specific alkaloids that seem to be responsible for these different effects within Kanna. So from a pharmaceutical standpoint, you really can design medicines around you know, specific issues that you want to support. And so this is like getting into the realm of phytopharmaceuticals, which I think is really uh, where the future is pharmaceuticals that are developed from completely natural compounds.
Mm. Are you seeing traction in that space? Is that something others are talking about too?
Well, I think that's what I mentioned Kanna Health is doing for the premature, um, men's
Right.
men's sexual health, like that. That's definitely a phytopharmaceutical application.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and I think you're right. Like, obviously, there's a lot of shade getting put towards big pharma, and a lot of people just want to take less drugs generally than they did maybe in the past. Um, and plants are where people want to go. It seems like to me. So that's really interesting. Um, I wonder. Hmm. Yeah, and I have to say I appreciate the way you talked about the drug interactions. Like I think that's really important. Um, very like I try to think when I've actually even seen serotonin syndrome in the wild. I've been around a lot of drug use and I've not even seen it like broadly, but we do know for sure it happens and it's not pleasant. Um,
Yeah,
and it's worth avoiding.
it. I mean, I've experienced it personally, and it is unpleasant. Um,
Mm,
it and again, it happened because I was doing a lot of journeys, a lot of weekends in a row, and that's generally when it does happen, is when you're doing really high doses of things that massively increase your serotonin levels, and you're doing that over a long period of time, and you do start to see the symptoms appear. Um, so anything that I'm doing with Kanna and the doses that are recommended, it's very, very unlikely.
can you describe what it was like for you to have it?
Yeah, I mean, it felt like headaches and these weird electrical sensations moving through my nervous system, all the way from my spine into my head, and and it just felt like an unusual kind of pain. Like it felt did not feel nice at all. And
Hmm.
I just needed to stop doing journeys, and I get good sleep, good nutrition, and it went away on its own.
Right. Um, I also have a history of doing too much. And I never got to that point. But like I got to some other pretty, similarly bad spaces. So yes, that's a reminder to everybody that you need to take breaks. Just like you need to take some days off from the gym, you need to take some days off from journeying and deep inner work, uh,
For
especially
sure.
when there's some substantial stuff going on biochemically in you with them. Um, is there any kind of a addiction profile that we know about with Kanna?
Kanna seems to be anti-addictive. It seems to, especially when people are taking it in a low dose over a 4 to 6 week protocol, it seems to have a reverse tolerance where people find that the more that they take it, the less they need it. Um, yeah, it does not produce any kind of withdrawal symptoms, so it's not like physically or chemically addictive. Um, it actually seems to reduce the cravings that people feel if say like they're addicted to something else. Um, and what I can speak to from the indigenous communities that use it, that they use the plant in different forms and doses all the way from birth until death. Uh, when a baby is teething or colicky, they'll take fermented kanna and put it in breast milk and put it in the baby's mouth to help with the pain. They take it, I mean, regularly from all ages, from birth until death, and the elders in these communities that are habitual or they use kanna regularly, they one are all well-adjusted members of society of their community, and two, they seem to be more lucid, like more just a better um, grip of their cognitive faculties. So I think that this does speak to the plant's safety profile, and yeah,
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, long, long, long history of use. Um, and are people working on new strains of Kanna as well, or is it kind of pretty settled on the particular one you talked about before?
uh, they're yes, they people are definitely working on new strains. So, like I mean, Zembrin has their own strains. I'm sure there's other growers and companies that are working on their own strains. I don't know of any that are as strong as DV17, and that genetics has been kind of stolen by a lot of people and is grown by most people. Um, my my supply partners are developing uh, DV 3.0, which is twice as strong as DV17. So there's definitely more strains that are out there, and um, in particular, I explained a little bit how we do the the selection process when we're growing from seed, and we're always looking for plants that are unique in like alkaloid levels, so that have high mesembranol or sclerotium-A4, that have these more rare alkaloids that in higher dosages, so that they can be uh, you know used for these novel extracts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what else? Um, well, I think we covered a lot of ground. Anything we maybe missed that was pretty major?
Um, no, no.
Has this concept of Nagoya protocols ever come up for you?
What's that?
Yeah, okay. So it's weird in that we as Americans aren't taught about it. I was chatting with somebody in the Iboga space earlier this morning about it. Um, it's apparently some sort of international protocol that First Nation folks are supposed to implement. The United States never signed it, as far as I understand, so we're not legally obligated. And it's about like relationships with tribal groups, but it sounds like you're doing some interesting work there already. Like, how do we do some reciprocal work to make sure they get some benefit of the thing they've stewarded? It becomes complex when it's not just a single tribal group, right? It's like possibly many groups have a
It's
history with
very,
it.
yeah, it's very, very complex. So all of the growers that I work with have benefit sharing agreements, and that can range as far as how much and how often they give, which is why separate from that, I'm doing my own benefit sharing agreement. Um, and South Africa does have laws in place to to protect their traditional knowledge keepers as well as like their natural resources within the country, and so that's what the growers are adhering to. Um, I mentioned that I'm working with this specific clan within the Khoi community. So we, um, I guess to just talk a little bit about what the different indigenous communities look like in South Africa. You have the San, which are pretty famous, like the Kalahari San. Like I'm sure you've seen images of that. Like they're an intact hunter-gatherer culture. Um, and the San um, in South Africa are they did a lot of the really beautiful cave paintings that you see come out of South Africa is the San. And I mean that is a really incredible shamanic culture in terms of their relationship to altered states of consciousness or what they call trance states, and how they use these trance states to perform healings and connect with spirit and just uh, interact with all life on the planet. And Kanna is a very central part of their culture. Then you have the Khoi, which are distinctly different. They are also an ancient people. We actually have no idea how old they are, um, but easily just as old as the San, and some people think they might be older. Their culture is a pastoral culture, so they herd cattle and goats. And Kanna was a very central part of their culture as well. And there's many other different indigenous communities in South Africa. Those are the two that we know of that had traditional knowledge of Kanna. Um, I mentioned a name, Chief Katela. So Richard Katela was a chief of a Khoi clan in Kanna land, and he did a lot to to help the broader Khoi community across the country. Because sadly, it is a um, they are living in like the lowest poverty level possible, and you know, I mean, if you know anything about the history of South Africa, you know it's been pretty brutal. So they're having a very difficult time, and many of them have forgotten like that they are like some of the first people of that land, and he really did a lot. Chief Katela really did a lot to remind them of how important the Khoi are. Um, so there's many Khoi clans throughout South Africa. His clan in particular happens to be where this high alkaloid strain was discovered, and so it's with him and his clan directly that I have this um, benefit sharing agreement that is we're specifically supporting activities that preserve uh, like traditional Khoi culture. The ultimate goal is to then be really sensitive with the way that funds are used so that it does not do even more damage to their communities. Like if you just start giving money to some people and not others, then I mean it can do more harm than good. Um, so the last I just got back from South Africa, and so the last project that we supported, um, all the so there's girls from all of these different Khoi clans that learn the traditional songs and dances, and then they all come together for almost like a festival or a celebration where they all kind of they compete and perform their songs and dances. And so, the girls are all wearing different clothes, whatever clothes that they can, their family provides them. And so what we did was buy like real hides, real animal skins for them to sew in the traditional way to make like their traditional outfits for all of the girls in this festival.
Wow, that's really interesting, and that's such a cool way of helping them. And you're spot on. You just Westerners can roll into these scenarios and make their impact pretty worthless often because we just think we know what they need, and maybe we should ask, develop a relationship, and then ask.
I did, yeah. So I did ask that question to Sam. Chief Catella has passed, so it was his brother Sam that I was speaking with, and I asked him what he felt would most help um, the Khoi community, and he said helping us start our own businesses within the community that are like local businesses, so that we can participate, so that we can create jobs for people in our community. So that is something that we're looking at for the future is how can we support some kind of incubator project for local businesses.
Yeah, I love that. And that's kind of in line with the whole Kiva loan situation, and I think that's really fantastic, and a great way to make it ongoing. You know, um, generating your own power.
Yeah, and as much as possible, I would like to work directly with the different communities rather than it getting potentially getting lost in a bureaucratic structure.
Right. Yeah, you can become quite faceless after a while if you're dealing with the big, gigantic ones. Um, cool. Well, Ryan, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing about your work over there and what you're doing with Kanna. It's fascinating. I can't wait to try it with psilocybin and maybe alone as well. Um, yeah, I'm just really excited. So I really appreciate you coming on. Where can people find your companies?
So KannaExtract.com is where the pure extracts are that we talked about. It's also where the Kanna vapes will be. And then HearthstoneCollective.com is the low therapeutic doses of Kanna that are designed to be taken daily.
Right on. Well, Ryan, thank you again, and I hope people check it out and hope we can chat more in the future.
Likewise, thanks for having me.